Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with some old world scenery. I'm going to be painting up one of the old kits from Warhammer the Old World. Now this kit wasn't actually available for a long period of time, so it would be on the rarer side of scenery. Now, back in the day, all of our scenery was just pretty much a solid color. None of the tables were really that spectacular back in the day, but we were limited in the kind of tools that we had access to. And I'm wondering if I can take an older scenery kit and add an extra bit of flair using a few sneaky bits of extra tools and equipment which has come into the hobby since the old world went away. So that's what I'm going to do in today's video. I'm going to try and paint up a scenery piece to a quite nice, quite high standard, something that I'd be very proud to put on the tabletop using a few cheeky techniques and some awesome products. Not sponsored in any way, shape or form, nothing to do with that, I'm just curious. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around guys and enjoy this video. Okay, so this is the epic piece of scenery that used to exist for Warhammer the Old World, except it was just called Warhammer Fantasy when this thing was out. I do hope at some point Games Workshop does return all of these kits to sale, whether it's for a made to order or whatever. They're all amazing and I'm fairly sure they would sell like hotcakes. Even me, who pretty much has a full collection of the old scenery, would probably buy it all again because some of my scenery is not in the best of condition, was painted back then. I like to consider myself a better painter these days, a lot better at assembly, better at basing, everything. So I would like to get some nice, fresh, clean ones done. Luckily for me, this kit was never put together, so I got to build it for this video. And as you can see, I'm still working through things. So when it comes to like new tips, new tools, new like tricks to kind of work with older kits, this one here is gonna be, this just popped into my head and I thought it would be a good idea. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a knife to cut down all the connection points, because obviously these kits were the ones that weren't made in Warhammer World. These were like mass produced in China. So they're like a cheaper quality plastic. They don't go together particularly well. They're full of gaps. So what I did was I cleaned up the connection points as much as humanly possible. And then I just used AK textured sand and I used it like miter. So I filled in all the gaps with it. Obviously that this wouldn't work on something like, you know, a Tau tank or something that's supposed to be smooth. But on an old ratty looking tower that's, you know, hundreds of years old and has like foliage and stuff growing up it, I think this is going to work an absolute treat. So I was really excited when I don't know, decided to do this and filled it in. Now obviously it looks kind of crazy when it's this much on it. You can see all the different gaps and where I think the gaps needed to be filled. And it looks kind of rough. We're going to be playing with moss a little bit later and those bumps are going to come in really, really handy. So I'm going to now just move on to painting it kind of like I would have back in the day, hopefully being a little bit better. And then it's going to be like the second half of the video where I really dive into using some of those specialty tools, all the dirty down stuff, both the rust, the verdigris, and the moss. I know I said both the, and then said three things. I realized what I said as I said it. I apologize. So for now, all I'm going to do is I used a gray spray, gave it a nice solid coat. And then all I'm going to do is dry brush it up. A medium gray and a lighter gray, just to get the stone looking kind of stony. I think the brown shade that I sprayed over the model, it's just Agrax Earth Shade, so if you want to follow along, Agrax Earth Shade over your brown spray, I think works a treat. Otherwise, the thing is just going to look far too gray. It's going to look like a toy. We don't want that. We want it to look interesting. And if you look at any old building that's like old brickwork, it doesn't look gray. It's not solid gray. It's dirty. It's old. So I think this really kind of dark brown color, then dry brush up through the grays, I think it really works well. Here is half the model dry brush gray, and you'll see as I rotate it around, you can see the other half that hasn't been dry brushed yet. So here's the difference in the model now. So dry brushed, not dry brushed. So as you can see, dry brushing makes an absolutely huge difference to the model. And obviously there's a million other bits and pieces that need to be picked out. You will notice here that the rockage, the boulders, all that kind of stuff, I haven't really touched that yet because I very much wanted it to be a different direction of gray to, you know, the stonework. I didn't want them to look the same at all, or I think that would be a cheap thing to do. They're not going to be the same kind of stone, not going to be the same kind of stone. So yeah, I'm just going to leave them for a minute and I'll get to them in a minute. This is me putting on the lighter of the two. So this is like the final highlight of the gray until I put some effect paints on later on. So once again, it's just a dry, this is actually Celestra gray, which is really bright. And it's just a really light dry brush over the top of that. After that, we just grabbed a dark brown contrast paint and just hit all the wood with that. So obviously this thing has the kind of wooden balcony and the stairs going up and around. I kind of wish it had railings. That would have, I think, looked really cool. And rickety old railings can be broken in pieces. That's something I may add to it later on. use some old Warcry scenery or something to just add a little bit more to it. Maybe, if I can find the time. But this, once again, is just another simple step. Light gray is the color of the stairs now because of the spray, which means it'll take darker contrast quite well. So a nice dark brown contrast works a treat. We're also going to do the wooden panels on the inside of all of the door frames with that color as well. After that, we're jumping over to a bright metallic. And we're going to do all the silver bits. So for me, it's all of the barding framing on the door. I like to imagine that like this is a watchtower. This is like supposed to be a defensive position, whether it be sentries on a border or something like that. I don't think it should just have a flimsy wooden door. Plus, I need a few extra areas where I can show off rust later on. So I decided to do all the framing in metallics. I think that's the best way to go about doing it. There's two doors. I hit it with both. There's some barding and stuff on a trapdoor up on the roof that I did in silver as well. And then, of course, there's the big, huge clock piece skeleton, which goes on the top of this tower. When I said at the beginning of this video that this is quite a rare piece, it is. You won't find any other tutorials online really of how to paint this thing up, or pictures. Finding pictures of it online is really hard. And even when it was built and painted for events, or you saw it in a Games Workshop store or something like that, this piece was always missing. People either didn't bother building and painting it, or else it just broke off. It was a fragile piece and stuff like that. So having it in an events hall that it was constantly getting moved around and mauled meant that it was most likely going to break. I'm going to do my very best to take good care of my one. I think it's a really interesting thing. I think the skeleton acts as a big kind of clockwork, like it's a signal tower. So there's like Mansleib and Morsleib, the two moons in his hands. It's like the twin-tailed comet as one and then the moon as the other. So I don't really know what they're signaling. One is safe and one is bad. The enemy's coming or night and day. I don't really know, but I just think it's awesome. And I think it's definitely a thing that a signal tower would have, or a watchtower would have, to alert the nearby people. Obviously, there might be a string of these things up the mountain, Rohan calls for aid and all that jazz. So we're now going to jump over to the other metallics, obviously bronze and brass. So I'm going to do the entire skeleton in brass, except for the kind of poles holding him and the cogswork stuff at the back. And there's obviously these twin-tailed comet motify bits that are in there. Obviously, there is entire piles of skulls, window frames, and so there's two kind of window boxes like this filled with skulls. So we're just going to hit it with a really dark brown first, really dark beige first, and then I'm going to give it 2 dry brushes of like a bony color later on, just to brighten them up and make them look like skulls. Like I said before, these are all pretty standard techniques. I think most people who would, have the idea of painting up this tower would follow these steps, absolutely no problem, and get a fairly decent result. Even there's the shingles I'm going to do here. I'm going to do red shingles, and I am going to put some extra effort into them because I want this thing to look nice. Like, I don't know how much, I haven't checked, but this thing on eBay right now is going to cost you a couple €100 to buy. It's quite rare. I don't think it's worth a couple €100. I wouldn't imagine people should pay those kind of extortionate prices, but if you're a collector like me, I have spent that on less before, and I've been delighted when I've won the lot. So I feel privileged by the fact that I was smart enough back in the day to buy these old kits. So I think they deserve a nicer paint job. So I'm going to give them the kind of time and energy that they deserve. So even like I said with those red shingles, I'm going to go through 3 stages of red and like bump those colors up, make it look really sharp and look awesome. And here I am going in at those boulders again. So I've obviously gotten a dark brown, like a richy kind of grey brown color. I'm going to airbrush those on really quickly. Could have used a brush, no problem. I just want it to be quick. And as you can see, I'm going back and forth through different stages as different things are drying, giving them their time and trying to speed up time. So normally I start a video at like 9 in the morning and I finish it by 5. It's now like 7 o'clock at night and I'm still trying to bash through this. So I'm already kind of 2 or 3 hours behind myself getting this particular video ready. It was a lot more intensive than I intended it to be. Or no, I did intend it to be this intensive. I guess that's it. Like I wanted to try and go to the nth degree with it. So here I am highlighting shingles, and I'll do a final highlight on the shingles in a moment as well, just to make them pop, because I want it to look awesome. But I underestimated just how many awesome extra details do exist on these old towers, like the window boxes full of skulls, like the shingles, like the door frame, like all those kind of bits. So I was okay spending the extra time. I was okay finishing the day quite tired, but with an awesome piece of scenery that I'm really proud of. And hopefully you guys will enjoy the journey. We're nearly at the point now where I get to start playing with kind of some of those extra kind of technique-y paints. I know people have tried to do videos of these stuff before. I did the rust one before, but I've never really played around with the verdigree and the moss. They can be quite tricky paints to use, so hopefully I can go through a few tips and techniques from you guys while I use them and let you know what I think. So first of all, I'm going to dry brush up some silver over the brass and the other silver parts just to make it pop a little bit before I throw on any verdigris. I'm trying to avoid doing shades and stuff because, like I said, I want to use the technique paints for it. So here is the tower as it currently stands. This is where I would have left it back in the day. It would have looked fine on the tabletop. Cool tower. Looks awesome on a table, like finished. I'm happy. But I want to push it further. What tools that are available today that weren't available back then can we use to push this thing further? I feel like it's too drab and too grey. So the first paint that I'm going to reach for is going to be the moss, and I'm going to go crazy with the moss. I live in Ireland, lots of old ruins around, and they're all covered in moss. It's obviously a wet, damp environment. This watchtower, I'm going to imagine, is in a similar kind of area. So there is going to be that kind of moss and growth kind of attacking this thing and trying to reclaim it for nature. If you haven't seen these paints before, they were actually created for special effects for movies and stuff like that. So if they were making props or costumes for movies, and then somebody took them from that purpose and decided to try and use them for miniature painting, and then they got converted over for smaller bottles and general sale for people doing miniature hobby, and people have been using them ever since. So here's the moss, and as you can see, I'm going to go crazy on those kind of bumpy seams that I did the kind of miter work with the sand. And as you can see, the moss takes to those areas really, really well. That window box had a huge gap in it between where it was glued on and the rock face around it. There's no way there was going to be a smooth coat. Those older kits. So having moss and all the kind of texture paste in there really does help to blend it in. Going in and amongst all the boulders that are piled up next to the stairs. And basically you want to think about where moss is going to grow. Like I said, it loves moisture. So if it was like pelting down with rain all the time, where would the rain kind of dry last? Where would the water settle the most? And that's where you want to put the rocks. So it's going to be in all the cracks and all the crevices and all the recesses. So even the ledges going around the tower, I'd imagine that's going to hold a little bit of water, hence the growth of moss. Going down the steps where people's feet are actually going to be trotting is going to be worn down and still kind of grey. But in between all the cracks and in against the steps is going to be all that moss and stuff. As you can see, it's very quick to work with. And suddenly we had this drab, boring grey tower, and just with the addition of moss, I think it looks so cool. I'm so pleased with adding that. Like, this definitely had the biggest impact on this piece. The rust works great, the verdigris works great, but for me, that moss is incredible. And it's definitely something I'm going to be reaching for more and more as I create more old world pieces of scenery. I'm getting the itch to do something like Mordheim or Frostgrave or something like that is bubbling and is on the horizon for me, which is going to require an entire table of like custom scenery, walkways and gantries and a river system maybe, or a canal system. So that moss, I'm gonna have to buy bottle after bottle of it. I'm gonna go crazy. Here's me adding the rust. I'm adding it to all the metallic parts that I have added to this. Obviously the frame of the door. There is these extra silver bars, like I don't know whether it's holding kind of dodgy rock work together. But they are bolted through the wall. They seem to be there to literally hold parts together where maybe the wall or the structure is failing a little bit. And then all the spikes that ring around the tower to stop people climbing up and trying to fight over the parapet gets done with a bit of rust as well. And then obviously the door frame and stuff on top. After the rust has dried, we go in with a touch of water. That's what I showed you there in that water bottle. It's water. And obviously I have a damp brush and I just start to work the rust down, and then I like streaking it down below the thing. Obviously it reactivates. One of the most important things to remember with these three technical paints is not just to shake them. You need to shake the ever-loving hell out of them. But always screw off the top and I use a texture tool or a toothpick or something, and make sure you dig that down to the bottom of the bottle and scoop it around, and make sure you stir that paint in, because all of the like chemicals or whatever the rust effect is, or whatever the verdigris effect, the moss effect, settles to the bottom and goes a little bit hard. Once you stir it up, it kind of separates it from the bottom and it mixes through the rest of the chemicals and becomes what it's supposed to be. So that's what I always recommend you do. Make sure it's at a nice warm room temperature, 20 degrees or so. Make sure you scrape and swirl the bottom to kind of loosen all of the texture paste off the bat, and then you give it a nice solid shake until it's mixed perfectly, and then you just pour it onto a palette and then start using it. Here I am adding the verdigris to the clockwork devil thing with the, I don't know whether it's Moore's Lead and Man's Lead with the two symbols, or it's Twin-tailed Comet and the moon. I don't really know. Anyone have any suggestions on why he has these two particular symbols held high? I would consider myself quite knowledgeable in the old world, but I can't quite put my finger on why these two symbols are being held aloft. So once the verdigris and the rust have dried perfectly, including the water stage with the rust, I go back in with a little bit of silver paint, lead belcher, and I dry brush over the top of it. This just gives the indication that it's been worn back a bit. It's been scratched, it's been scuffed, it's been mauled, or they've been working on it or trying to get the clockwork to move. And it just makes those little bits pop a little bit more. So yeah, it's a very, very simple technique, but it's just going to make the end result pop. If you want to see me try the rust even more, you can go back and look at my original dirty down rust technique video. I'll link that down in the description below. It's a really good video. A lot of people rewatch it a lot. It's been shouted out on a bunch of different videos. So I tried this whole adding a bit of water and scraping it down is a me invention with this paint. So if you want to see how I figured that out through trial and error, that video is pretty good too. A lot of people seem to like it, and you can learn a little bit more about how these paints work. So with those all done, with the clockwork angel-y thing on the top glued in place, we have our finished watchtower. I really like it. I find it's really bizarre. Back in the day, we used to think of Warhammer the Old World as fantasy, but now that we have Age of Sigmar is like high fantasy, which means when I play Warhammer the Old World, I want it to be more like medieval fantasy. I don't want it to be crazy. I don't want like floating rocks and, you know, waterfalls of magic. I want old crumbling towers and, you know, deep dark forests and all that kind of stuff. That's what I want. And I think that this particular tower has ticked all the boxes for me. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I'm so glad that I used all the parts. I still have the 4 shields that I didn't get to paint on this one. They will get painted up and glued on around. You did see them at the very start of the video, but I just ran out of time. It would have taken me another hour and a half to get them painted up to the standard that I wanted to. So that was a bit of a shame. So here's all the still images that I took of this thing. And like I said, on a tabletop, I think this is going to look awesome. I think the big verdigris clockwork skeleton looks ace. That red silver dry brush at the end really did add a lot to it. And then you can see the mossy covered steps and rocks. I think it looks incredible as well. And then obviously some of the rust effect. And even the extra effort I put into those skulls and the little roofs. I think it all adds up. And it just, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took a long time to make, but I think it was definitely worth it. Well guys, there we have it. This awesome piece of scenery is now 100% complete. It is grim, it is dark, it is dingy, it's awesome. It's covered in moss and verdigris and rust. It's fully painted. I love it. It's really cool. It was a lot of fun to do. I've owned this since it came out originally. I only built it a few months back with the random intention of painting it. I never did. Now that the old world is back in full swing and I'm playing a million games of it, I'm going to try and build an entire table of custom new scenery / old scenery, new techniques, and hopefully they'll all turn out as cool as this one. I'd love to know your thoughts on this video, guys. Did you enjoy it? Did you learn anything? Were you tempted to try any of the awesome products available from this video? Please do let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like. Ask me any question you want in the comments below. I'll get back to everybody. Make sure you subscribe, and if you want to support the channel even further, go that extra mile, think about checking out our Patreon, linked down below. You get access to a private Discord server where you can chat to me about your hobby on a daily basis, and be surrounded by another 350 extra awesome hobbyists who are very nice, very helpful to each other. It's a really nice community. And then you also get an extra vlog style video from me every single day, keeping you up to date what's happening in the channel. You also get to chime in on that, so you can help me direct what kind of content I'm going to make and stuff like that. So if that's something that interests you, like I said, linked down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the very end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.